Hi, I'm Mike Volpe from HubSpot, and I'm here to talk about driving positive ROI on Twitter. This is a presentation that I actually gave at the Twitter Bootcamp. I had an opportunity to interview MC Hammer, who's a big Twitter personality. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers. And one piece of advice that he had that was really interesting to me was he said, forget the numbers, just be interesting. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. But I also think there's a lot to be said for measuring the numbers, measuring your ROI, and understanding what level of investment and what level of return you're getting out of your efforts on Twitter. Now, when you think about the I of the return on investment on Twitter, the investment is really time to listen, tweet, and respond because you need to be monitoring conversations. You need to be, tweeting. You need to be responding to people that send, tweet messages to you. But beyond that, I actually think that the level of investment required to be effective on Twitter goes way beyond tweeting and listening and responding, and a lot more about publishing interesting content. So not necessarily within those 140 characters, but on your blog, maybe videos, like this one, webinars, white papers, ebooks, lots of other useful and interesting information that people want to share. And that's really where I think most people sort of don't make enough of an investment is useful and interesting content. And because it's really this being interesting that is going to drive your ROI. So while I agree with MC Hammer that the most important thing is to be interesting, what's interesting is that if you are interesting on Twitter, that's what's actually going to drive your ROI, and it's going to make those numbers look a lot better. Because here's someone who's saying that they love HubSpot because everything they tweet is useful. And when you look at our tweets are a lot more about links to useful information than trying to pack a ton of wisdom into just 140 characters. And so, we have links to webinars, links to blog articles, all sorts of things like that. And there's a lot of value beyond those 140 characters because there's a link. And that's really why I think people find a lot of the content that we tend to publish on Twitter pretty useful. So now let's talk about the other side. Once you've made that investment, you're publishing lots of content, you're using Twitter as almost a communications platform to spread that content. The return that you can get is traffic to your website, buzz and additional spreading of your content, inbound links, which are especially good for search engine optimization. So this isn't an SEO presentation, but I think most people know that if you have more links coming to your website, that helps drive your rankings in Google and other search engines. And Twitter is a great way by spreading your information, making it more likely that people will link to that information. And so, all of that will definitely help with your Google rankings. If you use Twitter correctly and do it well, the part of the return can also be increased brand recognition. And then something that I really love to measure is leads and sales. And there's a number of examples of this, and I'll talk a little bit about sort of what we've done in terms of measuring leads and sales at HubSpot from our activity on Twitter. So that first return is website traffic. For us, 10% of our blog traffic comes from Twitter. It's the third most important source of traffic to our blog. And I think a lot of that is because the interesting information that we blog about, we then publish links to all of our blog articles on Twitter, and people often retweet those. We also have in our blog software built in a little link on every article that says, tweet this. And people can, very easily tweet the article to share with their friends, and people love to share useful information. And so, that's why I think a lot of our web traffic comes from Twitter. If you look at kind of buzz and content spreading, we get a lot of things that are retweeted. Here's an example of a few retweets of a webinar that we did. So we were in the middle of doing a webinar, and then all these people found that webinar useful and interesting, and they've become sort of fans of HubSpot. And it's interesting if you add up the sort of reach of all of these people. It's over, it's like 13,000 people that they were able to send these messages out to and sort of reach a much broader network than just the people following HubSpot. And that's sort of useful. So, one of those returns that you can get is your content spreading further than just the direct people within your network. Another thing that we mentioned in terms of the return on investment of Twitter is we see a lot of links coming from blog articles and other people posting our content other places online. And we see a lot of links coming into our website because of that activity on Twitter. And certainly not all of these links come only from Twitter, but spreading your content as far and wide as possible is really valuable, and that drives more links into your website. And one thing that's really I think true about Twitter is a lot of the people on Twitter do blog. And so if you get the Twitter audience engaged in your content, they're relatively likely to blog about some of your content and relatively likely to link to your site as part of that blog article, which is great because that's a strong indication to the search engines that your website is a good site and you have good content, and that's going to help you rank higher for a whole number of different keywords, which is really, really helpful today. Now, the other thing with Twitter is brand recognition. And the Twitter audience, really the active Twitter audience is only a few million people. Which in some ways seems like a lot of people. In other ways, compared to the size of most economies or the number of businesses in the U.S. or things like that, it's still a relatively small number. But what we've been able to do with all of our activity on Twitter is really sort of carve out an interesting kind of level of brand recognition. And so I'm calling it brand recognition, but it's the number of tweets that mention the word. And so this is from a tool called Tweet Volume. And when you compare the amount of tweeting that mentions HubSpot versus Salesforce or Constant Contact or NetSuite or Omniture, all other sort of sales and marketing software companies, I think you can see that for a relatively new company that's much smaller than any of the other companies on this graph, I think we've done a pretty good job of sort of harnessing that audience and getting them to talk about our content, creating a lot of buzz and brand recognition within the Twitter universe. Now, the other way to think about brand recognition is your authority on Twitter. And so what you can do here is measure your authority. You can do this for corporate accounts and things like that. And a number of HubSpot employees have very high scores on TwitterGrader. Myself, a few others as well. And then our company accounts actually score very well. So we've got two sort of corporate accounts. We've got Grader and we've got HubSpot. And both of those have a large number of followers, and they score very, very well in this tool, which is another sort of indication of kind of brand recognition, authority, reach within this audience of Twitter, which is great. And that's another sort of return out of the investment that we've made. And then the final sort of piece of that return is leads and sales. So as I mentioned, that Twitter is not only a top source of traffic to our blog, but it's also a top source of traffic to our main corporate website. And we get a pretty good conversion rate, over 5% conversion rate on that Twitter traffic, because I think we've done a good job of engaging with that audience and giving them useful things. And we've also got about an average sort of conversion rate from leads to sales. And so we're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month in the value of the leads that we're getting from Twitter, and we've actually gotten customers out of that as well. And we can track this all using our software, and we encourage lots of companies to sort of think about Twitter this way as sort of a sales and lead generating tool. So that's sort of the what I wanted to talk about in terms of the ROI of Twitter. I've got a bunch of other additional Twitter resources here. So a link to download these slides, TwitterGrader, things like that. And if you like this, please follow me on Twitter. I'm mvolpe, and I look forward to tweeting with you. Thanks.